routine checkup in clinic, turned to be a delight for her. He anticipated that this would be just another standard visit to the clinic, but was unprepared for what transpired next. Adam had never found pleasure in visiting the clinic. The cold, sterile environment always left him feeling uncomfortable. The stark white walls, the harsh fluorescent lighting, and the faint scent of antiseptic served as constant reminders of why he delayed medical appointments for as long as possible. He expected today to be no exception. A brief checkup, a few routine inquiries, and he would be on his way before he realized it. However, as he sat on the examination table, tapping his fingers against the frigid metal, an unsettling sensation lingered. There was something about this day that felt distinct, though he could not identify precisely what it was. The door opened, and a nurse entered, her name tag identifying her as Carla. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, sporting a bright, reassuring smile that eased Adam's anxiety slightly. Carla possessed sharp, observant eyes that seemed to absorb everything around her. Her movements were fluid and almost elegant as she approached him with a clipboard in hand. She proceeded to ask the standard questions, her voice soft yet professional as she checked his vitals and made notes. Initially, Adam paid little attention to her demeanor, considering she was merely fulfilling her duties. Yet, there was something in the way she navigated the room, the way her gaze lingered on him just a fraction too long, that sent a shiver down his spine. He dismissed it as mere nerves. After all, he had always disliked clinics. Nevertheless, the feeling persisted. "All right, Mr. Adam," Carla said with a courteous smile. "The doctor will be in shortly. Please wait here." Adam nodded, offering a faint smile in return as she exited the room, closing the door gently behind her. He inhaled deeply, attempting to dispel the strange tension that seemed to envelop the space. Perhaps he was merely over-analyzing the situation. It was just a routine visit, nothing more. Yet, as the minutes passed, the sense of unease only intensified. When Carla returned, something had shifted. Adam found it difficult to identify the change in the atmosphere between them, yet it was undeniably present. Her demeanor remained amicable, but there was a newfound intensity in her gaze, a quiet focus that had not existed before. She approached him once more, this time without the clipboard, positioning herself closer to the examination table. "We just need to check a few more things," she stated softly. "After that, you'll be all set." Adam nodded, though an unsettling feeling began to grow in his chest. He observed as Carla moved to take his pulse, her fingers lightly brushing against his wrist. The contact was innocent, yet it lingered, causing his skin to tingle under her touch. He felt his heart rate increase, not due to the examination itself, but because of the way her fingers seemed to linger just a moment too long. When he glanced up, their eyes met for the briefest instant, and he noticed something in her expression that made his breath catch. This was no longer a mere routine checkup. The way she regarded him and the gentle caress of her fingers felt distinctly different. He attempted to dismiss the sensation, convincing himself that he was merely imagining things. However, as Carla continued her examination, the tension in the room became palpable. Her movements remained professional, yet an unspoken energy charged the air between them, something Adam could not overlook. "Go ahead and unbutton your pants," she instructed, her tone steady, yet there was an undercurrent of something he could not quite define. For a moment, he hesitated, taken aback by the request. While it was not uncommon in a medical context, the manner in which she articulated it felt personal. He swallowed hard, nodding slowly as he complied. As he fumbled with the button of his pants and unzipped them, he couldn't help but notice how Carla's gaze remained fixed on him, her eyes darting between his face and his hands. His heart raced, not from the examination itself, but from the intensity of her scrutiny. The atmosphere between them felt thick, almost stifling, leaving Adam uncertain if it was merely a figment of his imagination, or he questioned whether it was merely his imagination or something deeper. Shifting on the examination table, he attempted to regulate his breathing. However, when he glanced up again, he found Carla's gaze fixed on him, and this time, the alteration in her expression was unmistakable. There was an element of intrigue in her eyes, a curiosity that drew him in. As she approached to continue the examination, a shiver coursed down his spine. "I'll just check here," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Her fingers grazed his skin once more, this time with intent, igniting a wave of warmth within him. He struggled to remain still, to maintain his composure, but the intensity of her gaze and the lingering touch of her fingers made it nearly impossible. Neither of them spoke. The silence in the room was thick, laden with unspoken tension that neither dared to confront, yet it hung palpably in the air between them. "You're tense," Carla remarked softly, her hand now resting lightly on his thigh. Her touch was gentle yet firm, exuding a confidence that made his heart race even more. He nodded, though relaxation felt utterly unattainable at that moment. Her hand lingered longer than appropriate, her fingers brushing against him in a manner that left him breathless. His body reacted instinctively, and he sensed that she was aware of it. Carla's gaze fell to where his pants were still partially undone, and he felt a rush of heat as her lips parted slightly, as if she were on the verge of speaking. Yet, she hesitated, her hands still on his leg, tracing delicate patterns on his skin. "I'm just going to check," she whispered, her voice barely audible, as if she were uncertain whether she was addressing him or herself. Her hand moved slowly and deliberately, the touch no longer clinical but charged with a different energy. Adam sensed the warmth of her palm against his skin as her fingers lightly grazed the fabric of his underwear. A soft exhale escaped him, overwhelmed by the intimacy of the moment. The room suddenly felt constricted, as if the walls were closing in around them. His breathing became shallow, and he could feel the tension between them intensifying with each passing second. Adam found it difficult to concentrate on anything else, his thoughts racing as Carla's fingers continued to caress his skin in a manner that transcended professionalism. Each movement she made, each breath she took, seemed to saturate the small space with an escalating tension. The sterile white walls and the scent of antiseptic faded into the background, overshadowed by the unspoken connection that enveloped them. He shifted slightly on the examination table, attempting to steady his breath, but the heat building between them was impossible to ignore. Carla's gaze flickered over him, her usual clinical detachment replaced by a more profound intensity that sent a jolt of awareness through him. It felt as though they were ensnared in a moment neither had anticipated yet found irresistible. As she continued the examination, Carla's touch became more intentional, her fingers lingering on his skin just a fraction longer than necessary. Adam swallowed hard, his pulse quickening as her hand brushed against him once more. He questioned whether it was merely his imagination, but it seemed as though she was savoring each movement, imbuing them with a significance that extended beyond the typical medical procedure. Her fingers lightly traced the waistband of his underwear, adjusting the fabric ever so slightly, sending a shiver down his spine. His heart raced, every nerve in his body alert. He glanced up, meeting her eyes for the briefest moment, and what he saw there caused his breath to hitch. There was no denying it any longer. Carla's expression had transformed from that of a detached medical professional to one that was deeply personal, intimate, and charged with an intensity that left his thoughts in disarray. He could perceive the change in her eyes, which had darkened slightly, and the way her lips parted as if she wished to speak but found herself at a loss for words. "I'll just check here," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hand moved again, sliding lower, and the touch ignited a wave of warmth within him. Adam struggled to remain composed, yet his body reacted instinctively. Each time her fingers grazed his skin, it felt as though a spark of electricity coursed through him. The atmosphere between them was thick, laden with unspoken emotions, and neither seemed to know how to dispel the tension. Adam felt heat rising in his chest, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps as Carla's hand continued its slow, deliberate exploration. The proximity, the warmth of her body next to his, and the way her touch quickened his pulse were overwhelming. He glanced up at her once more, their eyes locking, and for an extended moment, silence enveloped them, heavy with the significance of the moment and the possibilities that lay ahead. Carla's lips parted slightly, her breath catching as she hesitated, her hands still resting on his thigh. "You're tense," she observed softly, her voice almost inaudible. Her fingers pressed gently against his skin, a light yet firm touch that sent another wave of awareness through him. Adam nodded, though relaxing was far from his thoughts. The tension between them was palpable, intensifying with each passing second, and he was uncertain how to alleviate it. In fact, he wasn't even sure he wanted to. "It's okay," Carla whispered, her hand moving again, her fingers brushing against him in a manner that made his heart race. Just relax. Her words were meant to be calming, yet they did little to quell the storm brewing within him. Adam sensed his body responding to her touch, a tingling sensation spreading across his skin beneath her fingers. He was acutely aware that she could perceive it as well. There was no concealing the way his breath quickened or the tension that built in his muscles under her hand. Carla's gaze dropped to where his pants remained partially unfastened, and a wave of heat surged through him. Her lips parted as if she intended to speak, yet no words emerged. Instead, she hesitated, her eyes lingering on him with a mix of curiosity and intrigue. For a fleeting moment, Adam feared she might withdraw, that the moment would dissipate and normalcy would resume. However, she leaned in slightly closer, her breath warm against his skin, and he felt the space around them constrict, the walls seeming to close in as the tension intensified. "I'm just going to check," Carla murmured again, her voice barely above a whisper, yet this time it carried a different tone, softer, more intimate. Her hand moved with renewed purpose, as if the line between professional and personal had vanished entirely. Adam's breath hitched as her fingers brushed against him once more. The touch had transformed from clinical to warm, imbued with a tenderness that sent a shiver of anticipation coursing through him. He could feel his pulse racing in his ears, his body responding to her in ways he had not anticipated. The silence enveloping the room was profound, the only sound being the subtle rustle of fabric as Carla adjusted his clothing just enough to continue her examination. Yet, her touch lingered longer than necessary, her fingers tracing delicate patterns across his skin that rendered him unable to remain still. He could feel the heat emanating from her body, the warmth of her breath on his skin as she leaned in closer, each movement deliberate and calculated, as if she were gauging the waters. Adam felt a surge of adrenaline as Carla's hand brushed against him once more, this time with a newfound assurance. He met her gaze, and the intensity in her eyes caused his breath to catch. It was clear that this was no longer a mere routine examination. The atmosphere between them was thick with unspoken tension, something palpable and undeniable. For a brief moment, they remained motionless, the silence enveloping them, heavy with all that had gone unexpressed. Adam's heart raced, his breaths becoming short and uneven as he struggled to maintain his composure, but the challenge grew more difficult with each passing moment. Carla's hand moved again, her fingers grazing him in a manner that ignited a wave of anticipation throughout his body. He felt an unexpected warmth of desire beginning to simmer within him, a sensation he could neither ignore nor fully comprehend. When he looked at her again, he recognized that same yearning mirrored in her expression. This was no ordinary examination, it had transformed into something far more significant. Then, she uttered words that took him by surprise. "Go ahead and unbutton your pants." Adam froze, his heart pounding in his chest, his thoughts racing. He had undergone numerous medical checkups throughout his life, each one routine and unremarkable. Yet, this situation felt entirely different. He sensed a shift in the atmosphere, an intangible quality that was impossible to overlook. Carla's request reverberated in his mind, leaving him questioning whether he had truly heard her correctly. He hesitated, his fingers poised near his waistband, uncertain of how to respond. Was this typical? Was it part of the standard procedure? He had never felt so out of place in a medical setting before. It was usually cold, sterile, and impersonal, exactly how he preferred it. But now, the room was anything but impersonal. It was charged with an intimacy that left him feeling vulnerable. Adam swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. He glanced up at Carla, who was standing a little too close, her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made his breath catch. Her expression was calm and professional, yet there was something in her gaze that quickened his pulse. "Is this part of the exam?" Adam asked, his voice emerging rougher than he had intended. He cleared his throat, attempting to regain his composure, but the tension building between them was impossible to ignore. Carla did not respond immediately. Instead, she continued to gaze at him, her eyes briefly flicking down to where his hands hovered near his waistband. She seemed to hesitate for a moment, as if weighing something within herself. Then, with a small smile, she nodded. "Yes, it is," she replied, her voice smooth and reassuring, though there was a subtle shift in her tone that made Adam's skin prickle with awareness. I just need to check a few more things. Adam was uncertain whether to trust her, but he nodded anyway, his hands moving to unbutton his pants. His fingers trembled slightly as he fumbled with the button, silently cursing his nervousness. This was merely an exam, nothing more. He was overthinking it, reading too much into the situation. However, as he slid the zipper down and felt Carla's gaze on him, it became increasingly difficult to convince himself that this was just another routine checkup. The air in the room felt thicker, almost suffocating, and every movement was charged with an energy he could not comprehend. His heart pounded in his chest as he lowered the waistband of his pants just enough for Carla to proceed with the examination. He tried to remain calm, to focus on anything other than the way her eyes followed his every action, but it was futile. The tension in the room had reached a critical point, and Adam could feel it coursing through every inch of his body. Carla approached him, her fingers gently grazing his skin as she adjusted his clothing. The touch was delicate, almost ethereal, yet it ignited a surge of awareness within him that caused his breath to falter. Although she maintained a professional demeanor, there was an unmistakable shift in the nature of her touch, one that felt far from clinical. Her fingers lingered slightly longer than necessary, and Adam experienced a rush of warmth, his pulse quickening as he fought to remain composed. He questioned whether it was merely his imagination, but it seemed as though Carla was savoring the moment, her movements slow and intentional, as if exploring the limits of propriety. The silence enveloping the room was profound. Neither spoke, yet the unspoken tension was tangible. When Adam briefly met Carla's gaze, he recognized the same awareness mirrored in her eyes. For an instant, he anticipated that she might withdraw, allowing the moment to dissipate, but instead, she leaned in closer, her breath warm against his skin as she continued her examination with measured slowness. Her fingers brushed against him once more, this time with greater intent, prompting an instinctive reaction from his body, his muscles tightening under her touch. "I'll just check here," Carla whispered, her voice barely audible. There was a distinct change in her tone, softer, more intimate, as if the line between professionalism and something deeper had vanished entirely. Adam felt his breath hitch as her hand moved again, her fingers tracing a deliberate path across his skin. The lightness of her touch sent a wave of heat coursing through him, making it increasingly difficult to remain still, his heart racing and pulse pounding in his ears. The atmosphere surrounding them was dense, charged with an unexpressed tension that neither seemed inclined to confront. Adam's thoughts raced as he attempted to comprehend the situation, yet clarity eluded him. His attention was solely captured by the sensation of her fingers gliding over his skin, the warmth of her breath, and the proximity of her body to his. For a brief moment, they remained motionless, the silence between them stretching taut and oppressive, as if the confines of the small examination room were constricting around them. Adam could feel his heart thundering in his chest, his breaths coming in quick, shallow intervals as he struggled to maintain composure. However, the escalating heat between them was undeniable, and his body reacted instinctively to her every caress. Carla's fingers brushed against him once more, this time with greater assurance, sending a shiver coursing down his spine. He met her gaze, their eyes locking in an extended moment, the silence laden with the gravity of their shared experience. "You're tense," Carla remarked softly, her hand now resting delicately on his thigh. Her touch was gentle, yet possessed a firmness that intensified the rapid beating of his heart. He nodded, though relaxation felt utterly unattainable in that instant. The tension between them was excruciating, escalating with each fleeting second, and he questioned how much longer he could endure it. "It's okay," Carla murmured, her fingers moving again, lightly brushing against his skin. Adam swallowed hard, his throat parched and his mind in turmoil. He endeavored to concentrate on her soothing words to quell the tempest brewing within him, but it proved futile. Each time her fingers made contact, each gentle graze against his skin ignited a jolt of electricity, making it increasingly difficult to remain still. The silence enveloping the room was overwhelming, the air thick with anticipation. Adam's breaths came in shallow gasps, his pulse racing as Carla's hand continued its exploration, tracing delicate patterns across his skin. The situation was overwhelming, the proximity and warmth of her body next to his, the way her touch quickened his heartbeat, left him at a loss for how to halt it, though a part of him was reluctant to do so. Her touch was gentle and considerate, yet it lacked any clinical detachment. Adam could feel his pulse quickening and his heart racing, as Carla's fingers lingered on his skin. The room now felt constricted, the walls seemingly closing in as the tension between them thickened and became more palpable. It was increasingly difficult to concentrate on anything other than the way her hand moved, the deliberate brushing of her fingers against him, signaling that this was no longer a mere routine examination. The silence hung heavily, charged with an unspoken acknowledgement that neither wished to confront. Adam's breaths came in shallow gasps, his body reacting to her touch in ways he could not control, as if his skin had awakened under her fingertips, every nerve ending alert, his senses overwhelmed by the escalating intensity surrounding them. Carla did not withdraw. Rather, she appeared to become more assertive, her movements more intentional, her touch lingering just a fraction too long. While she maintained a professional demeanor on the surface, the shift in the atmosphere was unmistakable. This was no longer a matter of medical necessity, but something deeper that neither could ignore. Adam shifted slightly on the examination table, seeking some means of grounding himself, yet it proved futile. Each time her fingers brushed against his skin, a shiver coursed down his spine, his muscles tensing in anticipation. He could not tell if it was merely his imagination, but it seemed as though Carla's hand was moving more slowly now, her touch more intimate and purposeful. "I'm just going to check here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Adam nodded, his throat too parched to articulate a response, attempting to focus on the ceiling or anything that might distract him from the escalating heat between them, but it was in vain. All that occupied his thoughts was the sensation of her fingers against his skin, the way her breath appeared to quicken and become shallower as the atmosphere in the room thickened with each passing moment. Carla's hand descended lower, her fingers lightly grazing his thigh, and Adam experienced a surge of warmth coursing through him. His breath caught in his throat, and his body instinctively responded to her touch, a reaction he was certain she could sense as well. There was no concealing the tension in his muscles beneath her hand, nor could he ignore the rapid beating of his heart whenever her fingers ventured too close. He raised his gaze to meet hers, and for an instant, time seemed to stand still. The outside world faded away, leaving only the two of them ensnared in an unexpected moment. Carla's eyes were dark and her gaze intense as she looked down at him, revealing the desire, curiosity, and unspoken questions that lingered between them. For a fleeting second, he feared she might withdraw, that she would step back and allow the moment to dissipate, forcing them to act as if nothing had transpired. However, she leaned in closer instead, her breath warm against his skin, her hand resting on his thigh in a manner that felt far from professional. "I'll just check here," she reiterated, her voice now softer and more intimate. Her fingers began to move again, tracing slow, deliberate patterns across his skin, and Adam felt his body react, his pulse racing and breath coming in shallow gasps. He was uncertain how much longer he could maintain the facade of a routine checkup. The tension between them was too palpable, too intense, and he sensed himself on the brink of something he might not be able to control. Carla's hand moved once more, this time with greater assurance, her fingers brushing against him in a manner that ignited a sense of anticipation throughout his entire being. Adam swallowed hard, his throat parched, as his mind raced to comprehend the unfolding situation. This was not how things were meant to be. This was merely a routine examination, yet the lingering quality of her touch and the intensity of her gaze made it evident that they had crossed an unspoken boundary. For a brief moment, neither of them made a move. The silence enveloping the room was stifling, the atmosphere heavy with all that remained unexpressed. Adam felt a growing heat within him, a gradual intensity that became increasingly difficult to dismiss. His body responded to her presence, muscles taut and skin alive with awareness, and he sensed that she was acutely aware of it as well. He raised his eyes to meet hers, and in that instant, a palpable shift occurred. The air around them seemed to crackle with an electric charge, the tension escalating to a critical point. Carla's hand rested on his thigh, her fingers tracing slow, deliberate circles against his skin, and Adam felt himself teetering on the edge of losing control. He attempted to articulate something, anything, to alleviate the tension, but words eluded him. Instead, he observed as Carla's gaze fell to the area where his pants remained partially unfastened, her lips slightly parted as if she wished to speak but found herself at a loss. Then, as if a silent agreement had been reached, Carla leaned in closer, her breath warm against his ear. "You're responding well," she whispered, her voice soft yet charged with an intensity that sent Adam's heart racing. He nodded, his throat too parched to articulate a response, acutely aware of his body's involuntary reactions to her touch, reactions he had not anticipated and could not suppress. The tension between them was almost unbearable, the air thick with anticipation, and Adam questioned how much longer he could restrain himself. Carla's hand ventured lower, brushing against him with a touch that was both tender and electrifying. Adam's breath caught in his throat, his muscles tightening as a surge of heat coursed through him, the slow burn of desire intensifying within. A heat was building that became increasingly difficult to disregard. Her fingers traced slow, deliberate patterns across his skin, her touch light yet intentional, causing Adam to feel himself unraveling beneath her hand. Every nerve in his body ignited under her caress, his senses overwhelmed by the moment's intensity. "I've wanted to do this since you walked in," Carla whispered, her lips nearly brushing his ear, allowing him to feel the warmth of her breath against his skin. "Since the moment I saw you." Her words sent a thrill coursing through him, a rush of heat that made his heart race even faster. He sensed himself slipping, losing control, aware that there was no turning back. The line had been crossed, and they were both engulfed in the moment, caught in the overwhelming intensity of their desire. Adam's breath came in short, shallow gasps as he leaned closer, his lips grazing hers in a kiss that began softly, hesitantly, but quickly deepened as their mutual longing surged. Carla's hand continued its movement, sending waves of warmth through him, and Adam felt himself surrendering to the moment's intensity. The sterile, clinical atmosphere of the room faded, replaced by the intoxicating closeness that enveloped them. The connection between them was now undeniable, their desire escalating with each passing second, and Adam realized there was no turning back. With just one look, it was evident they had crossed a line from which there was no return. Adam felt the weight of the moment pressing upon him, a blend of excitement and apprehension coursing through his veins. The intensity between him and Carla had reached a level that was impossible to ignore. The kiss they had just shared marked a pivotal moment. What had begun as a subtle shift in the atmosphere had transformed into a full-blown storm, one that neither of them could halt. Carla's lips lingered just above his, her warm breath brushing against his skin as if she were anticipating his next action. Her gaze was fixed on him, filled with an emotion he had never encountered before. Desire, yes, but also something more profound that quickened his heartbeat. Adam could feel his pulse thundering in his ears, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps as he leaned in closer, pressing his lips against hers once again. This kiss was no longer tentative or gentle, it was charged and electric, fueled by the tension that had been accumulating between them since they entered the room. Carla responded immediately, her hand tightening on his thigh as she kissed him back with equal fervor. Her fingers traced slow, deliberate patterns against his skin, igniting waves of heat within him. Instinctively, Adam's body reacted, his muscles tensing as the desire that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted. The sterile clinic room faded into the background, the cold white walls and antiseptic scent vanishing as Adam became entirely absorbed in the moment. There was nothing clinical about what was unfolding. His mind raced, thoughts scattered as he struggled to comprehend it all, but the intensity of their connection eclipsed everything else. Adam's hands found their way to Carla's waist, drawing her closer, feeling the warmth of her body against his. Each touch, each kiss felt like a promise, an unspoken agreement that they had crossed a line from which there was no return. The tension between them had transformed into something more, a raw, primal need that neither could resist. Carla's breath quickened as Adam's hands glided up her back, her lips parting as she deepened the kiss. He could feel her heart racing beneath his fingertips, echoing the frantic rhythm of his own. Their bodies moved in sync, driven by a shared desire that had been quietly building since their first encounter. He found himself questioning how it had escalated to this point, how a mere routine checkup had transformed into such a charged and intense encounter. Yet, as they stood in this moment, retreat was no longer an option. The boundary had been crossed, and Adam understood that whatever unfolded next would irrevocably alter everything. Carla's hand moved once more, this time with intention, her fingers grazing against him in a manner that caused his breath to hitch. Instinctively, Adam's body responded, his muscles tightened, and his skin tingled with heightened awareness. He could sense the warmth emanating from her, the heat of her breath against his neck as she kissed him again, this time with a fervor that sent a surge of electricity coursing through him. Their movements became increasingly urgent and frantic, the intensity of the moment overwhelming them. Adam felt the slow burn of desire igniting within him, a heat that was becoming impossible to resist. His breaths came in ragged gasps as Carla's hand descended lower, her touch both tender and purposeful, driving him closer to the brink of control. "You're driving me insane," Adam murmured, his voice strained and barely coherent. Carla smiled against his lips, her breath warm against his skin as she replied, "Good." Her fingers maintained their slow, agonizingly perfect rhythm, and Adam felt himself unraveling beneath her touch. Every nerve ending in his body ignited, every inch of his skin alive with sensation as the heat between them became unbearable. He questioned how much longer he could endure, how much longer he could resist the magnetic pull of the moment. Carla's lips traveled from his mouth to his neck, leaving a trail of soft, heated kisses that made Adam's skin tingle. His hands gripped her waist tighter, drawing her closer, unable to withstand the attraction between them. Each touch, each kiss seemed to fan the flames of desire, propelling them both toward a point of no return. "I shouldn't be doing this," Carla whispered against his skin, yet there was no hesitation in her voice, no indication that she truly wished to stop. Her words heightened the intensity of the moment, rendering it more forbidden, as if they were traversing a boundary from which neither could return. Adam found himself unable to restrain his feelings any longer. The chemistry that had evolved from a mere flicker to an all-consuming blaze was irresistible. He kissed her once more, his hands finding their way to her hips, drawing her even closer as their bodies melded together. The sterile, clinical ambience of the room dissipated, replaced by the intoxicating intimacy that enveloped them. The tension that had existed between them transformed into something more primal and intense, and Adam realized there was no turning back. Carla's hand descended lower, grazing him with a touch that ignited a desperate need within him. He felt the tension within him tightening, a slow burn that became increasingly impossible to ignore. His breath quickened, shallow and rapid, as the intensity of their connection reached a critical point. He understood they had crossed a threshold, yet in that moment, nothing else mattered but the overwhelming desire that consumed them both. The bond they shared was undeniable, and Adam felt himself losing control as the heat between them intensified. Carla's lips met his again, deep and fervent, and he recognized that there was no return from this moment. They were enveloped in each other, and whatever consequences awaited them could be addressed later. At that instant, the only thing that mattered was the fervor of their desire, the all-encompassing need that had taken hold of them. The outside world faded into oblivion, leaving just the two of them, ensnared in the tempest of their own creation. Adam understood unequivocally that this was a line they could never uncross. There was no way back. He was adrift in the moment, unable to think clearly any longer. His mind was engulfed in a tumult of emotions, sensations, and unbridled desire that demanded attention. Every fiber of his being was fixated on the woman before him, the sensation of her lips against his and the warmth of her body pressed closely to his own. It was an overwhelming, intoxicating experience that was impossible to resist. Carla's hands moved with newfound confidence, no longer tentative or hesitant. There was a certainty in her touch that quickened Adam's breath and accelerated his pulse. His body reacted to her every movement, each brush of her fingers sending electric sparks coursing through his skin. The tension that had been building between them had reached its zenith, and Adam was acutely aware that he was on the brink of losing control. Carla's fingers descended lower, her touch both light and purposeful, causing a deep shudder to ripple through him. He had not anticipated any of this when he entered the clinic earlier that day, nor when he had sat on the cold, sterile exam table. Yet now, as Carla's hand glided over his skin, all those prior moments felt distant and insignificant. The only thing that mattered was the fire that had ignited between them. Her lips found his once more, initially soft but quickly intensifying to match the fervent heat of their connection. Adam's hands encircled her waist, drawing her closer, and he could feel the rapid rhythm of her heart against his chest, echoing his own. It was as if they had both yielded to the moment, succumbing to a force far beyond their control. His fingers tightened around her waist, pulling her nearer as Carla pressed against him with equal fervor. The sensation of her body against his sent his senses into a frenzy, each movement and touch amplifying the blaze that burned between them. Adam's thoughts were clouded, overwhelmed by an urgent desire coursing through him, leaving no space for logical reasoning or doubt. The singular focus of his attention was Carla, her kisses, the way her body fit perfectly against his, as if they had been destined for this moment. Carla's breath caught as Adam's hands traveled lower, his fingers pressing into the small of her back, pulling her even closer. Her lips parted in a soft gasp, her body quivering beneath his touch, and Adam was acutely aware that she shared the same fiery intensity and undeniable bond. The sterile environment of the clinic faded into insignificance as they became lost in one another, the antiseptic odor, the harsh fluorescent lights, and the chill of the examination table were rendered irrelevant. All that occupied Adam's mind was Carla. Her lips, her hands, the sensation of her body against his. "I've longed for this," Carla whispered, her voice barely audible yet imbued with a raw urgency. That made Adam's heart race. "From the moment you entered," her words sent a shiver down his spine, quickening his pulse as her confession resonated within him. He had not anticipated this, had not foreseen such a turn of events, but in this heated moment, he recognized that perhaps he had desired it as well, from the instant she had walked into the room, from the moment her gaze lingered on a fraction too long. There had been an undeniable chemistry between them, something neither could dismiss. Adam leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that was both gentle and fervent, his body igniting under her touch, every nerve ending alive with anticipation. Carla's hands moved with increasing urgency, her fingers gliding over his skin, causing his breath to catch. The tension that enveloped them was unbearable, intensifying with each fleeting second, and Adam understood that they had irrevocably crossed a threshold. Carla's touch was intentional and assured, as if she possessed a profound understanding of the moment. Adam felt himself surrendering, descending further into the experience, his breath becoming short and shallow. His muscles tightened as her fingers glided with deliberate slowness, rendering clear thought impossible. The atmosphere around them seemed to constrict, the air thickening with the fervor of their mutual desire. Every inch of Adam's skin ignited under her caress, each nerve ending heightened as the intensity between them escalated to an overwhelming crescendo. He questioned how much longer he could endure, how much longer he could stave off the moment. "You're making it so hard to resist," Adam murmured, his voice hoarse with longing. Carla's lips curled into a subtle smile, her breath warm against his skin as she replied, "I'm not trying to resist anymore." Her words lingered in the space between them, solidifying the moment, and Adam realized there was no turning back. They were both ensnared in the flames of their desire, unwilling to halt there.
Progression.
With renewed urgency and confidence, Carla's fingers moved with greater intensity, and Adam felt the slow burn of longing intensifying within him, a heat that became increasingly impossible to dismiss. His body reacted instinctively to her touch, his breath coming in uneven gasps as the tension within him tightened. He met her gaze, and what he found in her eyes sent his heart racing even more. There was no doubt, no hesitation, only the same raw intensity that coursed through his veins, the undeniable need that had enveloped them both. Adam's hands found their way to her waist, drawing her closer, their bodies pressing together as their movements became more urgent and frantic. The sterile environment of the clinic faded from memory, overshadowed by the all-consuming heat of their connection. Carla's breath caught as Adam's hands descended lower, her body quivering against his. The moment intensified, each touch and kiss igniting a surge of warmth within him. Adam recognized that they were both on the brink of an uncontrollable experience. "You like this," Carla murmured, her voice barely audible yet imbued with a confidence that made Adam's heart race. He nodded, speechless, his breath shallow as Carla's caress brought him closer to the edge. The slow, steady burn within him was reaching its zenith, and he sensed himself losing control as the heat between them intensified. Her fingers moved lower, pressing against him with newfound determination, sending a jolt of electricity through his body. Instantly, his muscles tensed, and his breath hitched in his throat as the tension coiled tighter within him, the heat becoming nearly unbearable. Carla's lips grazed his ear, her breath warm and teasing as she whispered, "Let go." Her words were all it took. With a soft groan, Adam felt the tension within him shatter, waves of pleasure enveloping him as he surrendered entirely to the moment. His body trembled, every muscle tightening as the sensation overwhelmed him, his breath coming in quick, sharp gasps, his mind clouded by the intensity. For a fleeting instant, it felt as if the world had ceased to exist, leaving only the two of them ensnared in the overwhelming heat of the moment. Carla held him close, her fingers gently guiding him through the release, her lips planting soft kisses on his neck, cheek, and lips. Adam could feel her breath warm and steady, as she whispered soothing words of reassurance. Her body remained pressed against his, and he understood that something significant had shifted between them, an alteration that could not be reversed. Her voice quivered as she softly confessed, "I've desired this since the first moment I laid eyes on you." The atmosphere between them was thick and electric, and as Adam's breathing gradually steadied, he could still sense the warmth of Carla's touch. The impact of her words resonated within him, sending a shiver down his spine. Not merely due to the intensity of her declaration, but because it rendered everything that had transpired even more profound and tangible. Carla's gaze remained fixed on his, revealing a newfound vulnerability. He noticed the slight tremor in her lips, indicating her uncertainty about his reaction. The confidence she had exuded moments earlier seemed to wane in the aftermath of her revelation, as if the gravity of their shared experience had finally settled between them, leaving both unsure of their next steps. Adam swallowed hard, striving to collect his thoughts. He had not anticipated this when he entered the clinic that morning, expecting merely another routine appointment. Yet, as he stood there, still close to Carla, he recognized that everything had shifted. "You wanted this from the moment I walked in?" he inquired, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes searching hers for reassurance that he was not misinterpreting the situation.
Carla nodded. "Herr Gase Unwahrung."
"Yes," she admitted softly. "I know it's unprofessional and I shouldn't have felt this way, but from the moment I saw you, I felt something." Her words lingered in the air, raw and exposed, and Adam felt their weight pressing heavily on his chest. He had not anticipated such candor, such genuine emotion. It was as if Carla had laid her heart bare before him, and now it was his turn to respond. Adam inhaled deeply, his heart still racing from the intensity of their shared experience. He found himself at a loss for words, grappling with the complex emotions swirling within him: desire, confusion, excitement, and a profound sense of connection that he had not felt in quite some time. "Carla," he began, his voice rough and strained, as vulnerability washed over him, causing the words to catch in his throat. "I didn't expect this. I didn't come here thinking this would happen." Carla's lips parted slightly, as if she were about to respond, but she hesitated. The confidence she had displayed earlier seemed to fade, replaced by a nervousness that tugged at Adam's heart. He could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the concern over how he might react to her confession. Yet, he stepped closer, his voice soft yet resolute. "I'm not saying I didn't want it, I didn't realize I wanted it until it happened." Carla's expression softened, and a small smile began to form at the corners of her lips. It was not the bold, confident smile she had worn before, it was gentler, more authentic. Adam sensed the tension between them dissipating, transforming into something more tender and intimate. "You don't regret it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if she feared the answer. Adam shook his head. "No," he replied, his voice steady. "I don't regret it." Carla exhaled softly, as if she had been holding her breath in anticipation of his response. The relief in her eyes was unmistakable, and Adam felt a warmth spread through his chest, knowing his words had provided her with some solace. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence enveloped them, filled with a quiet understanding. Adam could still feel the aftershocks of their shared moment, the intensity of their connection lingering in the air. Yet now there was something else, something softer, a mutual recognition of what they had just experienced and what it signified for both of them. "I should not have whispered," her eyes briefly flickering down before reconnecting with his. "I recognize it was wrong, yet I do not harbor any regrets." Adam reached out, gently placing his hand on her arm, his touch providing reassurance. "We cannot alter what has occurred," he said softly, "but we can choose our path moving forward." Carla nodded slowly, her gaze unwavering. "I just want you to understand that this was not merely a mistake." Adam felt a tightening in his chest at her words. The vulnerability in her voice pierced the silence between them. He could sense the significance of this moment for her, the extent to which she had exposed herself, and oddly enough, it resonated with him as well, something he had not anticipated. "It was not a mistake," Adam asserted, his tone resolute.
"I do not believe that."
Carla then smiled, a genuine smile that illuminated her face as the tension in her shoulders dissipated. The burden of their recent exchange began to lift, replaced by a shared understanding neither had foreseen. They had not intended for this to happen, yet now that it had, they were compelled to confront the implications of their actions. "I have never experienced anything like this before," Carla confessed, her voice soft and tentative. Adam nodded, recognizing her hesitation.
"Neither have I. I did not foresee this."
Carla stepped closer, her hand gently brushing against his arm. "But it felt right," she murmured, her eyes searching his for reassurance. Without hesitation, Adam placed his hand over hers, squeezing it gently. "It did," he affirmed, his voice low yet assured.
They remained.
In that moment for an extended period, the silence between them now comfortable, laden with the significance of their shared experience and the unspoken promise of what lay ahead. The outside world faded away, leaving only the two of them, connected by an indescribable bond they could not ignore. Carla let out a soft sigh, her fingers still resting lightly on his arm. "What do we do now?" she inquired. Adam found himself at a loss for an answer. He was uncertain about what the future held. Adam was uncertain about how to navigate the complexities of their relationship after the boundaries between patient and nurse had been irrevocably blurred. However, he was certain of one thing: they could not overlook the profound connection they had discovered in one another. "We will figure it out," Adam finally asserted, his voice steady. Carla smiled, her eyes softening as she replied, "Together." In that moment, standing in the small clinic room with Carla, Adam recognized that they had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. Yet, despite the gravity of the situation, he felt no regret, none at all. Seated on the examination table, Adam's mind was still reeling from the events that had transpired. The once sterile and impersonal room now bore the weight of their shared experience, an encounter that had fundamentally transformed both the space and their relationship. The heavy silence that enveloped them was no longer charged with tension. Instead, it was imbued with a quiet intimacy that neither had anticipated. Carla stood a few steps away, her fingers nervously toying with the hem of her scrub top. The confidence she had exhibited earlier had given way to a more tentative demeanor. She gazed at him, her eyes reflecting a blend of emotions: uncertainty, curiosity, and perhaps a hint of fear regarding the implications of their actions and what lay ahead. Adam could still feel the lingering warmth of her touch, the way her hands had brushed against him, and the sensation
of her breath on his neck.
These memories were vivid and fresh, yet the reality of their situation was beginning to settle in. They had crossed an irrevocable line, one that could neither be erased nor ignored, and now they had to confront the consequences. For the moment, however, they remained close in the stillness, the silence between them filled with unspoken thoughts. Issues they were not yet prepared to confront, yet both understood all too well. Adam gazed at Carla, momentarily contemplating whether she felt remorse for the events that had unfolded. Her candid admission of desire and the subsequent actions had caught him off guard. He had not anticipated any of this when he entered the clinic that day. Yet, now that it had transpired, he could not overlook the profound connection they had established.
"Are you all right?"
Adam finally inquired, his voice gentle, breaking the silence that enveloped them. Carla lifted her gaze to meet his, her eyes wide and uncertain, but she nodded slowly. "Yes," she replied softly, her voice barely audible. I didn't expect it to happen like this." Adam nodded in empathy, acknowledging that he too had not foreseen such an outcome. Nevertheless, they stood together in the wake of a moment that had irrevocably altered their relationship. "Neither did I," he responded, his tone tender, "but I do not regret it." Carla exhaled softly, her shoulders easing slightly. She stepped closer, her hand grazing his arm as she positioned herself before him, her eyes searching his face for reassurance. Adam could discern the array of emotions flickering across her features. She was still grappling with the reality of their situation, just as he was. I thought you might, Carla confessed, her voice quivering slightly. Regret it, I mean. Adam shook his head firmly. No, I do not regret it. Carla offered him a small, tentative smile, one that did not fully reach her eyes but nonetheless alleviated some of the tension in the room. He recognized her lingering uncertainty, her struggle to comprehend the whirlwind of events that had transpired. This was not a scenario either of them had envisioned or prepared for. I don't know what happens next, Carla murmured, her gaze dropping to the floor before returning to his. This is complicated. Adam nodded, fully grasping her sentiment. What had begun as a routine checkup had evolved into a far more intricate situation, one that neither of them could undo. The boundaries between them had become indistinct, leaving them to navigate the uncertain terrain of their new reality. Adam acknowledged the situation, expressing confidence that they would find a way forward without needing all the answers immediately. Carla appeared to relax at his reassurance, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. She moved closer, her fingers lightly resting on his arm, a touch that conveyed the significance of their shared experience. Adam met her gaze, his expression gentle yet firm, recognizing the uncertainty reflected in her eyes, the unasked questions lingering between them. However, he also sensed a shared understanding of the profound connection they had just forged. We crossed a line, Carla murmured, her voice barely audible. I didn't intend for it to happen, but we did, she added. Adam acknowledged this truth with a nod, not avoiding the reality of their situation. Carla turned her gaze away momentarily, her brow furrowed in contemplation. Everything feels different now, she remarked, as if there's no returning to how things were. That's true, Adam replied, his tone steady. But perhaps that's not necessarily a negative development. Carla looked back at him, her eyes reflecting a blend of curiosity and doubt. You don't believe so? Adam shook his head gently. What transpired between us was genuine. We cannot act as if it never occurred, but that does not imply we must regret it. We will navigate what lies ahead.
Carla, bitte.
Lip, her gaze falling to the floor as she absorbed his words. Adam could see the internal conflict within her, the challenge of reconciling their recent experience with the reality of their circumstances. He understood that it would require time for both of them to process this change. I don't regret it either, Carla finally stated, her voice soft yet resolute. I just didn't anticipate it would feel this way. Adam smiled warmly, placing his hand over hers. Neither did I, he confessed, but here we are. Carla met his gaze, her expression softening as a small smile began to form at the corners of her lips. The uncertainty began to dissipate, supplanted by the quiet understanding that had developed between them. Although they did not possess all the answers, they recognized that such knowledge was not essential. What truly mattered was their mutual willingness to navigate the path ahead together. They remained in silence for an extended moment, the atmosphere around them warm and inviting. The intensity of the situation had subsided, leaving behind a sense of calm that felt like the dawn of new possibilities. What do we do now? Carla inquired, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam exhaled softly, gently squeezing her hand. I don't know, he replied candidly, but we will find a way. Carla responded with a genuine smile, one that illuminated her eyes, and in that instant, Adam realized that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would confront them as a united front. I shouldn't have. She began, but he silenced her with a gentle gesture, shaking his head. I don't regret anything. Adam observed as Carla's expression softened, her internal struggles still evident but now tempered by his reassurances. There was a quiet vulnerability in her gaze that tightened his chest, a look that indicated she was still wrestling with the implications of their connection. She opened her mouth, perhaps to voice some guilt, but before she could articulate her thoughts, he placed his hand lightly on her arm, his touch both gentle and reassuring. I don't regret it, he reiterated softly, his voice steady and his gaze unwavering. The weight of his words seemed to resonate with her, and she exhaled slowly, as if releasing a breath she had been holding in anticipation of judgment. Carla bit her lip, her fingers nervously intertwining as she absorbed his statement. But we crossed a line, she murmured, her voice barely audible. This wasn't supposed to happen. Adam nodded, fully aware of the seriousness of her concerns. He understood the professional boundaries they had compromised and the potential complications that could arise from their actions. Yet, despite this awareness, he found it difficult to view the situation in a negative light. However, he found it difficult to regard their bond as a mistake. The way they had come together, so intensely and unexpectedly, felt genuine and undeniable. "You're right," Adam said softly. "We did cross a line, but sometimes unforeseen events occur, and that does not render them wrong." His hand moved down her arm in a gesture of comfort, as natural as everything else that had transpired between them. "I don't regret it, Carla, and I hope you won't either." Carla raised her eyes to meet his, her lips parting as if she wished to speak, yet no words emerged. Instead, she searched his face for the sincerity she needed. When she found it, the certainty in his eyes and the quiet conviction in his voice, she began to relax, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "I don't want to regret it," she confessed softly, her voice quivering. "But it's difficult not to consider everything, especially how complicated this is." Adam could see the burden of her thoughts, the way her mind was likely racing through all possible outcomes and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. He understood, as he had been contemplating the same issues. Yet, he did not want her to become overwhelmed by fear. He wished for her to concentrate on the bond they had shared, a connection that was undeniably strong. "Complicated doesn't always equate to negative," he said gently, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. "It simply means we need to navigate it together." Carla let out a soft, almost shaky laugh, her gaze dropping to the floor as she nodded slowly. "I don't know how we will manage that," she murmured, "but I don't want this to fade away as if it were meaningless." "It did mean something," Adam replied firmly, "to both of us." Her eyes returned to his, revealing the uncertainty and fear of what their connection might entail. Yet beneath that fear, he sensed something else, an echo of his own feelings. She was reluctant to release the memories of what had transpired, and he felt the same. "Are you certain you have no regrets?" Carla inquired once more, her tone soft yet resolute. Adam shook his head affirmatively. "I am certain," he replied with conviction. "I do not regret it, not for a moment." A small, tentative smile appeared on Carla's lips, and Adam noticed the relief reflected in her eyes, as if his words had alleviated some burden she had been carrying. Although the uncertainty lingered, it was not as heavy. There was now a sense of tranquility, a mutual recognition that their recent experience was significant and should not be overlooked or forgotten. For an extended moment, they remained silent, the stillness between them neither awkward nor uncomfortable. Instead, it was imbued with the gravity of their shared experiences and the intensity of the bond that had developed. This connection was difficult to articulate, yet it was undeniably present. Carla inhaled deeply, her fingers fidgeting with the fabric of her scrubs as she surveyed the room. The sterile, clinical atmosphere suddenly felt incongruous, almost surreal, in light of the intimacy they had just shared. It was peculiar how a space that had previously seemed so impersonal now felt charged with the significance of their encounter. "I never anticipated this would occur," Carla confessed quietly, her gaze returning to his. "I have always been so cautious, so professional, but when you entered, everything felt different." Adam smiled, fully comprehending her sentiment. He had not foreseen any of this either, but from the instant Carla had stepped into the room, there had been a spark, an undeniable energy that neither could overlook. Initially subtle, it had evolved into something both profound and undeniable. "I felt it as well," Adam replied softly, his voice low and earnest. "From the moment I laid eyes on you, I sensed there was something special." Carla's gaze softened, and for the first time since their intimate exchange, she appeared to fully release the tension that had previously clouded her features. The nervousness dissipated, replaced by a warmth that felt more genuine. "I am uncertain about what lies ahead," she confessed quietly, "but I do not wish to lose this." Adam nodded in understanding, reaching out to gently grasp her hand. "We do not need to resolve everything at this moment," he reassured her. "We will take it step by step together." Carla's fingers wrapped around his, her hold both gentle and resolute. "Together," she echoed, her voice soft yet imbued with quiet determination. They remained in that position for a prolonged moment, their hands entwined, the significance of their shared experiences lingering in the air. The future was ambiguous, and both recognized that their connection would complicate matters, yet in that instant, neither was concerned. They had discovered something authentic in one another, something worthy of preservation. Adam smiled at her, his heart steady and assured. "I do not regret it," he reiterated, his tone filled with quiet conviction, "and I believe you should not either." Carla returned his smile, a genuine expression that illuminated her eyes and softened her entire demeanor. "I do not," she whispered, "not anymore." In that moment, Adam realized they had crossed an irrevocable threshold, yet he was confident that whatever lay ahead, they would confront it together. The atmosphere in the room had shifted, imbued with a warmth that had previously been absent. Adam and Carla stood close, their hands still lightly intertwined. Although they had not yet determined their next steps, a sense of tranquility enveloped them, a belief that they would navigate any challenges side by side. Adam could see it reflected in Carla's eyes, where her uncertainty had transformed into something softer and more assured. While questions about the future lingered, they remained anchored in the present, cherishing the moment they had shared and the bond they had cultivated. Carla spoke softly, her voice imbued with a sense of wonder as she surveyed the room. "I didn't anticipate any of this." Adam nodded in agreement, fully comprehending her sentiment. He too had not foreseen their current situation. Yet, here they stood, two individuals who had met in an ordinary clinic, only to discover something remarkable within each other. What had started as a routine appointment had evolved into a profound connection, transforming them in ways they had not foreseen. "It truly feels surreal," Adam replied gently, his tone warm. "However, I believe that sometimes the unexpected is precisely what we require." Carla smiled at his words, her eyes brightening with a soft glow. "Perhaps you are correct," she responded. "Maybe this is indeed what we needed, something unforeseen yet essential." The atmosphere in the room was heavy with the significance of their conversation, an unspoken recognition that what had transpired between them was not merely a transient experience, it held meaning and depth. Adam could still sense the residual electricity in the air, a remnant of the intensity they had shared, now accompanied by a new understanding. A mutual acceptance that they had ventured into uncharted territory, with no desire to retreat. "What happens now?" Carla inquired softly, her voice reflecting curiosity rather than trepidation. She was no longer anxious, she sought to comprehend how they would navigate this new chapter together. Taking a deep breath, Adam maintained his grip on her hands, anchoring them both in the present moment. "We will figure it out," he assured her, his voice steady. "We will take it one day at a time." Carla nodded, her gaze filled with quiet determination. "One day at a time," she echoed. There was a certain tranquility in her tone that resonated with him, a comforting simplicity in the plan they had devised. They did not require all the answers at this moment, it was sufficient to approach each day as it came, addressing the complexities together as they unfolded. "I never anticipated feeling this way," Carla confessed after a brief pause. "I expected to be overwhelmed with regret, consumed by concerns about others' opinions or the uncertainties ahead." Adam raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her candidness, and Carla responded with a soft, genuine smile that warmed his heart. "Perhaps this was meant to be," she continued, "as if our paths were destined to cross, even under such unforeseen circumstances." Her words resonated deeply within him, igniting a warmth in his heart. "I believe you are correct," he replied, his voice low yet assured. "It seems as though everything has aligned perfectly for this moment to occur. There is something almost enchanting about how we found each other, despite the odds and the randomness of it all. It feels as if life has guided us to this precise moment for a purpose, one that neither of us could have anticipated, yet now seems inevitable." "I am grateful it happened," Carla said softly, her voice imbued with sincerity. Adam smiled, tightening his grip on her hand slightly. "So am I," he responded, his tone filled with quiet determination. "I wouldn't change a thing." They remained there for an extended period, neither of them moving or feeling the need to speak. The silence that enveloped them was no longer tense, it was filled with understanding and an unspoken agreement that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would confront them together. They had crossed a threshold, but it was not one of regret. Rather, it was a boundary that had drawn them closer, revealing something genuine between them. "I think," Carla began, her voice tentative, "that we should simply see where this leads us. No pressure, no expectations, just allow things to unfold." Adam smiled, his heart feeling light as he nodded in agreement. "I believe that's the best idea," he remarked, emphasizing the absence of pressure or expectations. "Just the two of them." Carla responded with a gentle laugh, her eyes sparkling with a blend of relief and excitement. "Just us," she echoed, expressing her fondness for the notion. In that instant, Adam recognized that they had forged a new understanding, embarking on a fresh chapter in the narrative they were about to create together. The lack of immediate answers was inconsequential. What truly mattered was their mutual willingness to navigate whatever lay ahead, hand in hand. The tension that had previously permeated the room had evaporated, replaced by a serene peace that enveloped them like a comforting blanket. There was no need to rush or to have everything figured out. They simply needed to proceed one step at a time together. As they stood close yet unhurried, Adam experienced a wave of clarity. He had entered the clinic that morning anticipating nothing more than a routine checkup, but he emerged with something far more significant, something he hadn't even realized he was seeking. In that moment, with Carla beside him, Adam understood that whatever awaited them would be an adventure worth pursuing. Sometimes, the unexpected is precisely what we require, and that was the case for him. What began as a standard checkup evolved into a life-altering experience. Life has a remarkable way of surprising us, often when we are least prepared. The most mundane moments can transform into extraordinary events, reshaping our lives in unimaginable ways. Yet, it is these moments that highlight the profound power of connection, the raw, undeniable force that can unite two individuals, even when they are unaware of its impending arrival. If you found this story engaging, please take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. We would love to hear how you would respond in a similar situation. Additionally, do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more enthralling stories that are sure to captivate you. You will not want to miss what we have in store for you next. Be sure to click the bell icon to receive updates on all our latest content. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and until next time, remain curious and connected.